Hello, welcome to Forest Focus as we discuss Nottingham Forest's position in the Premier League table and what we think the next few weeks might bring, heading towards the January transfer window. Joining me today to discuss that and a little bit more is BBC's senior football news reporter, Nick Mashiter. Nick, good to have you back with us after an appearance in August, I think. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all right, Tar. Thank you. Yeah, I was. It's good timing. I was at the Forest training ground yesterday for an interview with somebody who will pop up on the website, I think, tomorrow. So yeah, have a look out for that one. It was good. It was a good chat. It was a good chat. But it was very, very cold in the dome.
Yeah.
2 hours in the dome yesterday at Forest. It was ended up a little bit chilly.
Oh, well, we'll look out for that one. We'll look out for that one. People who listened to last time Nick was on know that we went to uni together. And I don't want to make you feel old, but I did drive past there the other day on the way to catch a train. And I was thinking that when we were there, all the people I was driving past probably weren't even born. If you want to, not to bring you down, but that was a bit sobering of middle-agedness. But you're younger than me, actually, aren't you? I think.
Yeah, I think by a year, 18 months. Yeah. You were in third year, weren't you? So, well, you were a year ahead of me. So,
yeah, I think so. It's a bit weird now that we're sat here talking about football and people are going to listen to it compared to when we were at university. And I doubt anyone read what we did, but it was a good learning experience, certainly. So let's talk about.
Well, you grounded me well because you did drag me to Forest quite a few times.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, and now you've seen them plenty. You've seen them quite a few times this season in person, so it's good to get your take on them. We're 7th in the league. We've had a couple of defeats, so it's maybe put a little dampener on things. But what do you make of us? Do you think we're overachieving thus far, or can you see why we are where we are?
Well, look, they've still got one of the best defences in the league, and that's a nice progression from last season. We've seen that Matt Sells is the undisputed number one. Of course, there's a solid rest of the back four. Milinkovic has made a huge difference. That then elevates everybody else around him. That they've clearly got understanding there. So there's the solid foundation that Nuno would have wanted in the first place, and then you've got Gibbs, White, Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, Anderson has come in. I think obviously he's not started as many games as he might have wanted to, but he's come in, and every time I've seen him, I've been really impressed. And everybody behind Chris Wood is sort of set up to help Chris Wood succeed as well. So he's got 14 goals for club and country this season. I know maybe sort of the 5 that he scored on international duty this month against Vanuatu and someone else, I think, as well, wasn't it?
Samoa, yeah.
Samoa, yeah. So that they might have been slightly easier than getting goals in the Premier League, but he's on form. So there's a good defence, there's creativity and steel in midfield, and an informed scoring striker. I know obviously last couple of games haven't gone their way, but that put that in the pot, put all that in and mix it together, and you've got a successful side. So Forest are where they are on merit right now. They deserve to be where they are. Newcastle and Arsenal, perhaps reality checks. Would it be expected that Newcastle and Arsenal would beat them this season? Maybe, yeah, of course. But I will probably see where Forest really are come Boxing Day. Come Spurs visit on Boxing Day. We'll probably see Forest in the position that they may be expected to hold out for or challenge for the rest of the season. But as I said, at the minute, they've done exceptionally well, and you find it difficult to find avenues to criticise with.
It's interesting as well. Like you mentioned Newcastle and Arsenal there. It feels like a league, a bit like the Championship, because Newcastle beat Arsenal, beat us. We beat West Ham and look $1 million. Then West Ham go there and beat Newcastle, who look terrible. It's you get that generally, but it feels like a lot of the Premier Leagues like that. And we'll have watched a lot of Championship football over the years, and anyone can beat anyone. Do you think that this is a trend that's going to continue throughout the season with results like that?
I wouldn't be surprised. There seems to be 3 mini leagues really in the Premier League. When you're looking at the ones challenging for, I mean, you could argue maybe 4 if you're going to say Liverpool and Man City are a class above everybody else, so they'll challenge in their own mini league for the title. Then others who are going to challenge for the top 4 in Europe. Everybody else, whether that might be Forest, Newcastle, and West Ham, Fulham, or those who are going to struggle at the bottom and are trying to fight it out in the bottom five or six to stay up. So I think if you look at it that way, you can see things panning out in the same way this season. There are probably still a couple of clubs who are going to struggle and are going to struggle to get out of the bottom three. I can't see the top two being any different, despite Man City's struggles. We know how they usually finish a season. And then it's probably 4 or 5 going for the rest of the top 4. Aston Villa haven't managed to replicate what they're just the consistency, really. They've still got the same players, they've still got the same manager. Villa haven't managed to replicate the consistency they had last season. I'm there tonight against Juventus. And then you've got Fulham, Brentford, who are unbeaten at home. You know, there aren't any gimmies in the Premier League anymore. And look at Southampton against Liverpool. Southampton could have easily taken something against Liverpool. Could have beaten them had it not been for mistakes and a penalty. Ipswich, they're fearless. They've spent a lot of money and they bought, I think, pretty well as well. You know, they've as I said, they spent a lot of money to do it, but they've spent it quite well. And that's not going to be a rollover weekend either.
Let's talk a little bit more about the upcoming fixtures then. Like you say, probably sort out a bit where Forest are. Ipswich at home, I'll ask you a bit more about that in general. City away, United away, Villa at home, Brentford's away, Tottenham at home. You can spin narratives around all those games, can't you? I mean, City away now, you can say, oh, they've lost 5 in a row. We could maybe get something. United away, oh, Amorim settled in. Villa, as you say, aren't as consistent. Is it more about just how Forest perform? Because, you know, we saw against Newcastle, they dropped their levels a bit and it cost them massively. Is it more about how Forest look after themselves and just, you know, the rest will take care of itself in a way?
Yeah, and it always will be, not to kind of paraphrase Nuno too much, but that's what he will say. That's what he does say. That is likely to what he's going to say tomorrow at his press conference. So, as I said at the start, Forest have got the players to do the damage. They've gone to Anfield and won. They've got players in form. They've got players who can play themselves back into form, and there's no reason why they can't take points off these sides with Man City in relative terms disarray, and United probably could or should have lost against Ipswich at the weekend, and Ipswich themselves certainly winnable, but again, that's a difficult game. As I said, they've bought really well. They've got good players, and they've got nothing to lose, having gone up when nobody expected them to go up. So Brentford, they're unbeaten at home, and Spurs coming off the back of beating Man City 4-0, but they also lost at home to Ipswich. So I'm loath to kind of make short or long term predictions without perhaps ending up with egg on my face come the end of the season. But it ultimately, as every manager would say, it's about their own team. Yeah, there's always 11 other players trying to stop them doing their jobs, but it's about how Morgan Gibbs-White gets to grips with things in midfield. It's about how Milinkovic will be able to deal with Delap at the weekend, and it's about whether Chris Wood can get the better of Dara O'Shea, for instance, as well. So there'll be the mini battles, but realistically, it's about how Forest play. It's about what they do.
Do you think there's too much made of no Gibbs-White, no Anderson in the last game? I mean, the easy thing to say is, oh, you know, no Rodri at City, Odegaard comes back into Arsenal and it transforms them. Is it taking, you know, is it giving the other players who stepped in at Arsenal a bit of an out to say, oh, we just didn't have Morgan, so, you know, we'll be fine when we get him back?
I don't think they would personally, I don't think players would use that as an excuse anyway. They weren't up to the standards they've set for themselves in the last 2 games. I was at Newcastle and Nuno was sort of held his hands up and said, well, they did a job on us. They did what we've done to everybody else up until that point. So no, I don't think the players would sort of start saying, oh, okay, well, we were out, you know, 2 of our best best midfielders. Naturally, it helps. Forest are weaker without Gibbs White in the side. Of course they are. But they are slowly getting that kind of sufficient depth, which is what they managed to sort of crawl towards to in the summer, with bringing in Ward-Prowse, with getting Elliot Anderson in as well. So they're getting there. Look, they're not the finished article by any stretch. They only just stayed up last season. I mean, obviously, with the points deduction, take that away, it's a lot more comfortable. But this is a side who have been in a relegation battle for the last 2 seasons, and they're slowly evolving. I think it was really, you look at the spree that they went on when they went up. Nobody's arguing that they needed to really invest in the side and get more players in. Of course, it got a lot more headlines because the amount of players they were signing. That worked, but as I did it at the time, the only player who started the Palace game in October of that spree was Dean Henderson, and he was in the Palace goal. So they were in the summer, and it's worked. What they've done, Anderson, Milinkovic, Sosakota, they were much more surgical in the summer in terms of looking at what they needed and where. And they've done that, getting just slowly building up that depth. And don't forget they've lost Danilo as well. First 15 minutes of the season. So they're getting there, but maybe you can look at it and go, the results and where they are have maybe clouded that and made everybody forget that, oh well, we really struggled the last couple of years. But so not to sort of labour the point, they're slowly getting there. You can't do it all in one summer. You can't do it all in 2 transfer windows, January and the summer. So they're edging towards a really, really good squad.
What's the next step in January, do you think, then? I don't know if you've got any insight on what you're expecting, but just from either what you've seen or people you've spoken to, what do you think might happen in January?
I think the danger is an over-reliance on Chris Wood. And we saw what they wanted to do in the summer, and they were still trying to bring in a striker. I don't think that's changed because they didn't manage to do that. Awoniyi's an able backup, but not to sort of criticise him because it's not necessarily always his fault. But there have been fitness concerns, haven't there, over the last sort of season or so. So I would say that you don't want to. You certainly don't want to lose Wood. You don't want to lose him for any period of time. So being able to find somebody who would be able to either support him, back him up, or push him further. He's 33 next Saturday as well. So he's not going to be around at Forest for absolutely forever. So I think a striker would be the sensible way to go. But January is, as everybody within football tells you, is notoriously difficult. So it's easier said than done to go and spend 20, 30 million, whatever a striker might cost.
Yeah, I mean, I did write in my notes here about Liam Delap, and I think he's like, I'm building him up into prime, R9 Ronaldo, the way I'm thinking about him, but he's obviously not that good, and he's not one you could buy in January. But is it kind of that ilk of striker? Evan Ferguson's another one who's available for loan, which would be a problem for Forest because they've got Moreno and Ward-Prowse on loan already, so that would complicate matters because they can only have 2 loans. But that ilk of striker, that powerful number 9, you think is probably what they need?
Yeah, with the way that the team is, it feels like it's been set up to succeed defence, midfield, attack. But if you just look at Wood, it just feels like it's set up for him and somebody, a striker like him. He's not. He said before, he's not a striker that's going to take the ball, beat 2 or 3 players, and stick it in the top corner. He relies on service, and they've got great service. They've got good wide options. They've got good number 10 and midfield options to thread it through, get it out wide, get it in the box. And that sort of maybe damning them with faint praise and making it sound a lot more basic than it is. But bringing somebody of the ilk of Wood, if you will, makes sense because of the way the team is set up, but you need options as well. So what to say that maybe getting somebody who's a little bit smaller, a little bit more nippy, a little bit quicker, would give them that plan B, if you will. So it's those are all the decisions that will be going through the minds of Nuno, Ross Wilson, whoever else is thinking about these things. Like, for instance, the targets will be identified, positions will be identified, and I'm speaking to somebody recently, not at Forest, but the profile of player will maybe change a little bit. You know, where they're looking at whether they're looking at a wide player or a striker, that little profile about exactly what they want might change after a week, after a month or so, depending, and it's also depending on who's available. So it's the short answer is you wouldn't be surprised to see them try to get a striker.
Yeah. Do you think the shortlist gets a little bit more ambitious now? We're say we go into January and we're still top 10. The shortlist, do you think, get a bit more ambitious, and are we a little bit easier to sell to clubs if we can say, you know, we're pushing for Europe potentially, or not?
Oh yeah, 100%. For instance, Leicester, they had issues obviously with a PSR charge hanging over their heads for a lot of the summer, and they had difficulties with players and bringing them in, because one of the questions is the natural, right, well, what's happening? Am I going to be joining a side that's going to start off the season at the bottom with a 9-point deduction? So if you can, if you're seventh like Forest are, and I mean, should really comfortably survive and potentially push for a surprise Conference League spot, why not? I mean, this is a club that's ambitious. This is a club we've seen has got money, is willing to spend money as well. So I don't see any reason why that Forest is not an attractive prospect right now.
No, I think so. I think you're right. I'm going to ask you a bit more about a couple of our players, and we'll talk about Ipswich, and we'll do a bit more wider Premier League chat. Just before that, a word for the Trent Navigation. Straight after the game on Saturday, entry is free to the following gig. Get ready, Nick, for 14 seconds, and you can tell us what you think of this on the other side. Beatles dubstep, is that up your street or not?
I didn't get any tickets for Glastonbury for next year, unfortunately. But yeah, you know, if you're in the mood, if it's a sunny day, why not?
Yeah, if it's a win, then why not get down and celebrate? Like I say, entry's free. So thanks very much to Nav for all their backing of this podcast. Very much appreciated as ever. Like I say at the top there, you've seen us in person quite a few times this season already. I'm sure you've seen TV games and highlights as well. One of the players that's in the spotlight, and it feels like there's always one at every club, and who's getting a bit of flack at the moment, it's Elanga, and quite a few fans would like to see him dropped for Jota Silva primarily. I mean, what have you made of Elanga this season?
Sometimes it's the nature of a winger that you can be inconsistent, and that you need to look at. I think you still need to look at what he gives and the outlet that there is. I think it was the Newcastle game. I don't think he had a bad game against Newcastle in particular. And if you look, maybe he needs to be sat out a little bit just to sort of either regain form and sit back and take stock of things. But I just think sometimes the nature of the winger is you can be in and out of games sometimes, and sometimes that, you know, that can be highlighted quite easily. But you only need 5 minutes in that position to turn the game.
Yeah, I think the West Ham game is a prime example of that. I don't know if you were at that one or, but he drew the second yellow card for, was it Rodriguez or whoever who got sent off? That changed the game, and he put in some great set pieces. I do think against Ipswich as well. Like, they're very attacking. Leif Davies really cheats, doesn't he? He plays very high. If there's going to be a game where Elanga can do something it would be this one. Otherwise, I probably would play Jota. People say I defend Elanga too much, but I feel like if there's going to be a game that suits him, it might be this one. The Ipswich game is an interesting one because they don't play like a normal promoted team necessarily, do they? Southampton are doing this where they'll play and play and play. Ipswich are doing it as well, but I think Ipswich are doing it better. Are they the best of the three promoted teams, you think, for you?
Yeah, I think they were always, for me, even before the start of the season, which maybe sound a little bit surprising because nobody expected them to get promoted in the first place. But as I said at the start, I really, really liked a lot of the business. They've had to spend a lot to do it. Liam Delap, 15 million plus 5 from Manchester City. Southampton also agreed that deal with City, but Ipswich blew them out of the water with the wages. So that gives you an example of kind of where they are and how they're challenging and how they're pushing other relegation rivals, if you want, out of the water in terms of who they're buying. Obviously, they were close to Philogene, who ended up decided to go back to Aston Villa for obviously understandable reasons as well. But I always felt that while they're at completely different sides and it is a different situation in a way, that they would be similar to Luton in terms of a lot of people write them off, but they would make a really, really good fist of it. And I think that's what we're still going to see from Ipswich. They're fearless. They're really well coached. Kieran McKenna is a really, really astute head coach. They're fortunate that he's stayed there. There were opportunities for him to leave both before the end of last season and in the summer. And at one stage, and I wrote it and I stand by it, that he was still planning to go, and it was very, very unlikely he was going to sign a new contract. Those opportunities, Brighton and Chelsea and United to a certain extent, they all disappeared, and Ipswich put a big contract down on the table for him. So they are very, very fortunate to have a manager like him, and I think he will be somebody who, whether Ipswich stay up or not, he will have a long career as a Premier League manager.
Do you back Forest to win the game? If Forest perform, do you think they'll probably still win 2-1, 1-0, a tight game? Is it one of those for you?
Yeah. We might suddenly see a 5-0 home win here. Now we've said it might be tight, but yeah, like Ipswich aren't any mugs. Forest will recognise that this is a really good opportunity at home to a promoted side to get back to where they were pre-Newcastle, and that will be drilled into them, I'm sure. So if you were going to maybe hold a gun to my head, then I'd probably still say a home win.
You've been across the Leicester situation, as you say, because you cover the whole Premier League. What have you made of the Cooper thing? We discussed it at length on Monday's show, and to me, it feels like a real failure from the start. I mean, I don't know how Leicester's board and ownership isn't getting more flack for hiring a guy and then sacking him like they didn't know what they were getting. What's your take on it?
Yeah, very, very true. That's I've said that previously this week as well. That I think the spotlight, the finger does need to be pointed at the board a little bit more. They're now looking for their fourth manager in 19 months, so it's difficult to say, well, you've been making the right decisions. Maresca, of course, did a really good job, got them promoted at the first attempt, but he didn't stick around, unfortunately, because there were issues with how he felt the club needed to go in the direction that he felt the club was going and needed to go. So they appointed Dean Smith after Brendan Rodgers left. That didn't work out. They were heading down as it was anyway. Maresca stayed for a season. Steve Cooper is perhaps not in the mould of Enzo Maresca and some of the players, although he did have the backing of several first teamers, senior players like Jamie Vardy. They were good for him. Some of the players felt that they were moving away from what made them so successful last season under Enzo Maresca, moving too far away from that. And ultimately, there was a struggle to get all of the squad on side to buy into what Steve Cooper wanted them to do. So, but it was. I could understand why they went for him and why he was appointed. but ultimately it was an appointment that, while everybody wanted it to succeed, and I've got a lot of time for Steve Cooper, everybody started to recognise that it wasn't working. So while you can criticise the board in terms of maybe going in the wrong direction initially, they probably deserve a little bit of credit for recognising that while we're going down the wrong road, we shouldn't be going down this road any further or any longer than we need to. So at least they did make the decision and recognise that, but they have rather got themselves into a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'll ask you about the bottom three and who you think is going down. Just one more on Cooper quickly. Where I would have thought, like, the Coventry job to me seemed perfect for him, but it's all wrapped up, I think. But is it that ilk of club where you think he probably ends up next? He's still so loved by Forest fans. That's why I'm asking you about him. But where do you think he goes next?
Oh, I think he's still got good pedigree, and within the game, everybody will recognise what he's done with the England under 17s, his time at Forest, taking them from the bottom to the promotion, keeping them up as well. And the foundations that Forest are benefiting from now were laid by Steve Cooper. So you can't forget that Morgan Gibbs White probably isn't at the club without Steve Cooper, given the relationship that they have. So, yeah, I think when championship jobs become available, obviously depending on where in the country or the size of the club, then I think Steve Cooper's probably one of the first names on the list.
Yeah, I think so. I think, somewhere like that. Maybe a lower end Premier League job, but he's always going to be fighting fires there. So I think, a top championship club would suit him very nicely. What about the teams to go down then? Obviously, I assume you don't think Forest are in the mix for that, or maybe you do. I don't know.
No. What was it? It was 27 points to stay up last season, which was the lowest. I think Luton went down on 26, if memory serves. So 27 would have kept you up, which is the lowest points tally since 2005, since we were at university.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, they're going to surpass that quite comfortably. I don't think we have too much to worry about for Forest. Bottom three, you still, even as much as I've kind of praised Ipswich for what they've done in Kieran McKenna, they'll still be in and around there. Southampton, as much as I admire what they're doing, it's hard to see them staying up given the amount of mistakes that they're making as well. And I was always more concerned for Leicester than I was for Wolves, even when Wolves had no wins in the bottom. Still felt Wolves have the squad. I like Gary O'Neill. I think, again, he's a very tactically astute and clever manager. I think I've always felt Wolves would be able to get themselves out of the position they were in. Now they're out of the bottom three. They need to push on, and obviously they've got Bournemouth at the weekend. They then play Everton and Ipswich and West Ham and Leicester. So sort of teams all either immediately below them or immediately above them. So the table for them is likely to look quite different come Christmas time as well. So you still look at it and go, maybe the bottom, the three that came up are likely to be the three that go down again. It's really hard to see past that, but Palace have struggled. There's no guarantees Wolves will continue to pick up, but personally, I think they will. So if you're going to look at the bottom three, I think Southampton, unfortunately, are really going to struggle to come out of it, and then there's two spots up for grabs.
I think Southampton and Leicester for me, definitely. Wolves are interesting because you might know more than me on this, but it depends what they do in January. Like, even if they might even sell someone in January, it feels like the way that they run things. I mean, like, they're not a one-man team, but Cunha is like an exceptional talent. If they keep him fit and they're at the club, then they probably will be fine.
But he cost over 40 million, so he should be.
Yeah.
He should be an exceptional talent, really. The plan would be for Wolves to get a centre-back in. They weren't able to do that in the summer. They lost Max Kilman, obviously. They lost Yerson Mosquera to season-ending injury in September. He did his cruciate at Aston Villa. So they're really at the bare bones for the defensive side of things. Certainly a centre back. So yeah, Wolves will look to get a centre back in January and hope that they're able to hang on to others. But it's a good unit there. Gary O'Neill's got the support and loyalty of the players. So and I think you saw that. You've seen that against Fulham at the weekend. Like João Gomez, for instance, gave him his shirt when he made his Brazil debut to say thank you for doing what you've done for me. So there's a great deal of unity at Wolves, and I think that's going to really help them slowly move away from the bottom three.
I noticed earlier in the show you said I'm not going to make any foolish predictions because they might come back and bite me, but I'm just going to ask you for a foolish prediction anyway, since we're talking about where teams will end up. I mean, you don't have to give me the exact number, but what bracket of the table would you have Forest in right now, judging on what you've seen?
Sometimes, would Villa rediscover their consistency? Can Fulham maintain their form? Obviously, they lost the weekend. Will Brentford eventually get beaten at home? How about Brighton? They're unbeaten at home as well, I think. I wouldn't be surprised to see Forest anywhere kind of sort of 8th to 12th. I said at the start of the season that realistically, a season of anonymity would be really, really positive for Forest. It wouldn't be too exciting. It might be a bit boring. It wouldn't be very sexy. But after all the off-field issues that they had, especially at the back end of the season, PSR, referees issues, social media, and then the subsequent touchline bans and fines for owner and management, to be able to be comfortably mid-table, one is positive on the pitch. You're not scrapping around at the bottom. You're not having to worry about relegation, and two, having that anonymity away from the pitch and away from the headlines, and haven't necessarily managed to escape it too much, but a lot of that is the hangover from last season. That would be a positive as well. Just plod along and play the football and stay out of the headlines is probably a really good season for Forest.
If you have enjoyed that, and thank you very much to Nick, do hit like, hit subscribe. You can become a channel member. You can sign up for Patreon. Do give us a lovely review on iTunes and Spotify. 5 stars are very welcome. We shall be back tomorrow with a full preview of the Ipswich game and then an opposition preview on Friday, post-match on Saturday. Nick, thank you very much. You stepped into the breach. There was supposed to be a second guest, so you carried the whole thing solo, which is very good of you. So thank you very much for doing that.
It's like carrying you is like what I did at the university paper. Yeah.
I properly walked into that, didn't I? That was an open goal that you weren't going to miss, certainly. Yes. Yeah, do check out Nick's work, even though you insulted me there. Do check out Nick's work on the BBC website and catch him across the BBC, I guess, and on social media. You can see it on there at Nick Mashiter on Twitter. Are you on Blue Sky? Have you bothered with that or not?
I have signed up, but I'm not active. I've just done it to get the username.
In case it takes off.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. We're on it. You can find us on Blue Sky if you want, if you're on there. We're still on Twitter and all that stuff. We're on Instagram, and obviously I'm on TikTok as well. Well, we're on TikTok. It's me doing it. So yeah, get us everywhere. Get us everywhere. Right. Like I say, back tomorrow. If we don't see you then, hopefully we shall see you soon.